Hi, Team Gerwell. We are flipping in fifth with me, Mrs. G. Welcome. We're starting a brand new topic tonight, Topic 3, Lesson 1. And today's learning target is, I will be able to identify and apply the multiplication properties. So we have quite a bit of vocabulary today, but it's really important that you take the time to write it all down and even draw pictures or take extra notes for things that help you remember what these mean. Number 1, product. The product is the answer to a multiplication problem. Number 2, factor. The numbers you multiply together to get a product. Number 3, the zero property. When you multiply any factor times 0, the product is 0. For example, 9 times 0 is 0. That's a pretty easy property to remember because it says it right in the definition. Zero property means there's a 0. The identity property is a little bit trickier. It means when you multiply any number by 1, then the product is that number. I remember that it's called the identity property because when we're born as babies, there's only one person in the world who looks like us, who has our own identity, right? So it doesn't matter if this baby is wearing a blue shirt or a purple shirt or an orange shirt. All that matters is that he has the one and only true identity. Okay, so that's how I remember. Identity, you only have one. And that means when you multiply any number by 1, the product is that number. Maybe that will help you. Associative property is a little bit tricky to remember too. This means that you can change the grouping of factors and the product will stay the same. There's a math example there, but let me show you what I think of when I think of associative property. So here we have a bunch of friends. So we have a boy and a baby and a group, okay? So they are going to associate with each other, which means they're going to hang out together, okay? So in this case, the baby and the group are going to hang out together and the boy is going to be by himself. But then the next day, maybe the boy in the group will hang out and the baby will be by himself. Still all the same people, they're just hanging out with different groups on different days. They're associating with different groups on different days. So that means you can change the grouping, but the product will stay the same. And the last one is the commutative property. You can change the order of the factors, but the product remains the same. I remember this because I think about my commute. The commute is basically when people go from their house to their work and then their work to their house. So in the morning, I wake up, oh, look at that happy sunshine, and I drive all the way to school, which basically takes me 1 minute because I live right across the street. But still, I commute all the way to school from home in the morning. Then in the afternoon, I start off at school and I commute back home. So you can see the order of my commute changes. In the morning, the order is house to school. In the afternoon, it's school to house, but it's still the same places. That's the commute or commutative property. That's how I remember it anyway. If drawing those pictures helps you remember it too, go ahead and do that. Remember, at any time, feel free to pause the video or rewind it so you can make sure that you have really good notes. So why do you need to know all of these properties of multiplication? Well, I can promise you that if you know the properties, it will always make multiplying, especially big numbers, much, much easier. Don't believe me? Well, check this out. Here we have an original expression, and we have 2 times 63 in parentheses times 50. I don't know about you, but I can definitely, it's harder for me to do 63 times 2 in my head and to try to figure out this all on its own. So instead, I'm going to use some properties to make it easier to solve. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use associative property to change the grouping because 2 times 50 is much easier for me to do in my head. 2 times 50 equals 100 times 63. Well, I can multiply that using mental math. I'm going to show you a little trick that we're going to learn more about tomorrow. But anytime you're multiplying by a 10 or 100 or 1,000 or even a billion, this is the trick that you're always going to use because another property can help you out. First, you're going to underline the value of the digits. So not the ones that don't have value, zeros, just the ones that have value. So I'm going to underline the 1 times 63. Well, 1 times 63, according to the identity property, I know the answer is going to be 63, right? So then I can do 6,300 is the product. How do I know that? Because I have 1 times 63 is 63, and I write that in here, and then I just count how many other zeros are in the problem, and there are 2 more, so I just tag them on the end. So I know that 2 times 63 times 50 is 6,300 because of the associative property and the identity property. So here, I want you to identify the property used in each expression. Let's look at this one and go ahead and pause the video. When you know which property is identified, I want you to write it down and then press play again. Welcome back. Let's see what the answer is. Did you write associative property? If you did, great job. Give yourselves a big pat on the back because yes, you knew that it didn't matter who or which numbers were associating or hanging out together. As long as the same numbers were there, it would be associative property. Let's try the next one. Go ahead and pause the video and write down what property you think this one is. So what did you write for this one? Remember, each person only has their own one true identity. 1 is in the expression, so it's the identity property. Now here's one. And I actually messed up on this one, so I want you to add something in. So it should say 4 times 32 times 8 equals 8 times 32 times 4. So what would that property be? Pause the video and then come back when you think you have an answer. This would be the commutative property because the grouping might change, but the numbers are all staying the same, especially if I had written in times 4 here. Sorry about that. Everybody messes up every once in a while, but it's okay. So now I want you to try. So here are some practice problems. I want you to go ahead and pause the video and tell me what number belongs in the underline, the blank, what number belongs there, and then which property would it be? Okay, so I want a number and a property. Go ahead and pause the video and come back when you're ready. Okay, here come the answers in 3, 2, 1. So number 1, where this underline should be, the number should be 0. Because we know, according to the 0 property, that the product is going to be 0 anytime any other numbers are multiplied by 0. So we know a 0 belongs there and it's 0 property. Number 2, it would be 8. And we know that this is true because of the associative property. If the 8 was in here, the grouping might be different. The people you associate with might be different, but it's still all the same people. And this last one, well, we know if it's going to equal the same thing as one of the factors, then this has to be a 1, right? And the identity property tells us that any number multiplied by 1 equals that number. So now here's a challenge question. I want you to go ahead and write this in your journal, and I want you to answer the questions for me, and we will go over them tomorrow. Farmer Bethany has 2 fields of corn with 3 rows of 5 plants. Farmer Joe has 3 fields of corn with 5 rows of 2 plants. Who has more corn, Bethany or Joe? What property of multiplication helped you find the answer without even having to do any math? We'll go over the answer tomorrow in class, but right now I want you to answer those questions for me in your journal. Before you go, make sure you've checked your work and write how many you got correct. Be honest, it's not for a grade. Number 2, honestly fill out the self-reflection and let me know if you could teach a friend, if you know what all of these properties mean and how to use them. And then fill in the space for any questions you still have. Remember, you must write at least 1 question or observation in this space. I hope you have a great night, and I can't wait to see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.